We're going to start the last session of the International Relations Conference, which is titled The Northeastern Region of India, Gateway to Southeast Asia. It's going to be moderated by Ambassador Navrekha Sharma. Ambassador Navrekha Sharma joined the IFS in 1971. She has had ambassadorial postings in Europe and some countries in Asia, like Indonesia and the Philippines, to be more precise. Ambassador Sharma has to her name an impressive list of published research papers and articles that have been published in the Hindu, the Jakarta Post. She's a regular participant in discussions held in prestigious think tanks like the IDSA and IPCS. I'm going to request Ambassador Devre to introduce our distinguished speakers this afternoon. Sir.
Well, friends, we have a very eminent panel this afternoon to discuss the topic Northeast in the Look-East policy. Mr. Bez Barua on left of Ambassador Sharma. He is currently member of the Northeast Council, the central body in Northeast, which deals with the host of issues relating to Northeast. Mr. Bez Barua is a former Indian Administrative Service officer who rose to Secretary, Ministry of Tourism, and before that he held several positions in the Northeast. He was also Chief Secretary of Assam. Okay. Next to him is Ambassador of Bhutan, Major General Versop Namgyal. Ambassador Namgyal, he has a degree from Darjeeling. Then after that, he joined the Royal Bhutan Army and was commissioned from the Indian Military Academy in 1972. He was in the Royal Bodyguards and subsequently worked as the ADC to His Majesty. As a senior member of the Royal Secretariat, he has worked directly in the higher echelons of government in Bhutan, and as military secretary, he coordinated several important security-related activities. Ambassador has been in India for now over 2 years, and he's, I think, he's the best equipped to tell us about the situation as he sees in our Northeast from the Bhutanese perspective. To my left is Mr. H.K. Dua, is a member of Parliament. Mr. Dua has been one of the most eminent journalists of India. He was editor, I think, of 4 newspapers, the Indian Express, Hindustan Times, Times of India, and the Tribune. He was also India's ambassador to Denmark. He has served as media advisor to former Prime Ministers Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee and Mr. Deve Gowda. He is now Member of Parliament in Rajya Sabha. His connection with Pune, he has been awarded Bal Gangadhar Tilak Award by the Kesari Trust a few years ago. Where is Mr. Datta's? Please announce. I don't have here.
So I will introduce Mr. Sabyasachi Datta. He's the director of the Asian Confluence, which is based in Shillong. Mr. Datta works very, very hard on the ground with other civil society organizations, as well as with government and academia, universities like our own, for mainstreaming issues related to the Northeast. Of course, he will be speaking a little later, and he will, of course, take you through the work that he does. Thank you.
Will you speak now? Yeah. Now I'll request Ambassador Navrekha Sharma to say a few words. Unfortunately, since yesterday, she is indisposed and she is in fact having very bad voice, virtually unable to speak, but she is still going to try.
Hello, will you raise the mic? Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, first of all, let me say thank you to Mr. Majumdar. Through him, the Symbiosis University. Can you hear me? Okay, good. For this very, very kind invitation and the opportunity to talk about my two favorite subjects. One is the Look East policy, because professionally I have been associated with it for many years. And the second favorite subject is the Northeast, where my second daughter was born. So I have a professional and a personal reason for being very happy to come here today. And except for my voice, which I cannot help. What I would like to start is to give you an introduction, or at least my view on how I think the policy that the new government has announced of putting the Northeast at the center of the Look East policy is a very good thing, I have to say that. And the reason why I believe that it will work, it didn't work when Mr. Vajpayee tried to do it 10 years ago in 2003, but the circumstances were not quite the same. Bangladesh was not taken on board, and the insurgency had not stopped in the Northeast. And in any case, at that time, the ASEAN was being handled quite as the only repository or stakeholder along with Northeast, not SAARC. So this is a very different experiment from what Mr. Vajpayee tried to do 10 years ago. But in any case, let me begin from the beginning. See, in foreign policy, our practitioners of foreign policy have considered three goals to be the important goals of foreign policy. The first, of course, is security and defense. Second is trade and investment. And the third one is people-to-people relations, building people. Now, in the way we have practiced foreign policy so far, the people-to-people relations has always taken a back seat, or at least it has been seen as something which supports the first two goals and not as an end in itself. I think what Mr. Modi is trying to say in the use of the terminology Act East rather than Look East, I think what he's trying to say is he wants to reverse the order. He wants to put the people-to-people relations and the pursuit of goals for people at the center and at the head of this three-tier paradigm, which is not to say that he has lost track of security and defense, or that he does not consider trade and investment to be important, because he is no woolly-headed utopian. He's not a woolly-headed utopian. He's a very practical man. And I think what he wants is to pursue the goal of development and security for the people of the Northeast, keeping that always in the center. Perhaps this is because there's a realization now that the Look East policy has reached a certain plateau. It has achieved what it set out to achieve. Trade has shot up incredibly from something like $4 billion when we began 25 years ago. It's now $90 billion. And all the processes are set. And the people who are promoting this kind of flourishing trade do not need hand-holding by the embassies or by the government of India anymore, except perhaps in some kind of a macro arrangement, the kind of thing that my friend Mr. Seshadri spoke about yesterday. Obviously, there are regulations, there are rules which still have to be framed and set. But the actual working of the look east policy on the trade side, more than the investment side, but even on the investment side, has taken off. So the need to shift gears is in order to bring in, as I said, to bring in people and actually to make the policy work in favor of people who need hand-holding, who need help still. That, I think, is what he is trying to do. Now, why Northeast? The question may well be asked, why Northeast? The Northeast, actually, we have been talking about cultural connections with Southeast Asia, and we are all aware of them. But what we are not aware of is the very deep-rooted connections which have been there for much older and deeper, but also which are current, which are still living in the connections between the Northeast and Southeast Asia. That is a very important point. There is anthropology, there are blood ties, there are forms of worship, there are languages, there are social patterns of social behavior. I think the attitude to women, for example, that you find in the Northeast is much closer to Southeast Asia than it is even to large parts of India. So I think there is a kind of, and of course the ethnicity, they look very similar. So I think these things are very important. But more than that, it's not just that. Actually, until partition, this entire region was one large ecosystem and one large economic space. The entire valley of the Brahmaputra in Assam was used for bringing goods down to Chittagong, all the way to Chittagong. So it had an outlet to the sea. It was very prosperous in raw materials. The British had, of course, discovered oil in Digboy. They had also planted tea. There was forest, ample forest. There were minerals. So there was a great deal, a very lively trade and commerce, which was actually going outside India from the Northeast. And I was reading some statistics. Assam, according to the state planning statistics, used to have a national income which was 4.1% above the national average at that time, in the early years, just at the time of independence. But by 1989-90, it had shrunk to 45 times less than the national average. I think partition created havoc of a kind that we, sitting in Delhi, are not always very aware. Of course, it created havoc in the West as well, in the western part of India. But that was of another kind, that was probably more emotional. Whereas here, it affected people's livelihoods in a very deep way. Now, I've already mentioned to you how Mr. Vajpayee had tried to bring in the Look East policy centered on Northeast and why it did not work. Now, one of the reasons why it did not work, because there was an attitude of suspicion, of course, not only between Bangladesh and us, which is mercifully it is much easier now with a secular government, but also within the Northeast itself and towards the Northeast from the side of the Indian government. And that is a very important reason why so far it has not been able to work. But why do I think it will work now? Do we not still see the people of the Northeast as troublemakers, as insurgents, as people who can't be trusted? Have we stopped seeing them like that? I think to some extent, yes. Because over the years, many young people from the Northeast have, and Northeast incidentally are very, very well educated young people. They have found jobs all over the country. You can see them everywhere. And they are very much in demand because they have great interpersonal skills. They are cheerful. They are responsive, very quick to respond. And especially in the social sector, in the services sector, you find a lot of demand for Northeast young boys and girls. They can be trusted. They're very willing to work in all kinds of work. That's very important. Now, this aspirational and well-educated youth is changing the mindsets of India towards the Northeast, if I may put it like that. Of course, there have been in the past reactions, violence even done to them. But I think that is a stray incident, and they are reactive. People who don't like change. But change is happening, whether you like it or not. The second reason why, the second thing that has changed, and from where I see hope, is that DONA, the Ministry for the Northeast, which was set up in about 10 years ago, is not under the Ministry of Home Affairs anymore. This is very important. Earlier, every decision affecting the Northeast had to be vetted through the Ministry of Home Affairs. That was because there was a law and order mindset which was controlling every decision. Even the NEC, the National Economic Council, which was set up way back in 1972 for planning for the Northeast, was really not able to function, even though it consisted of local people, local chief ministers, governors, who were very well respected, and it was a body which was owned by the Northeast, but it was not allowed to function because it came under the Ministry of Home Affairs. And planning, therefore, which requires you to take into confidence a number of states together, if you want to plan for the long term, simply did not happen. Decisions were taken always with security kept foremost in mind. And they tended to be, of course Mr. Bezbarua will tell us more about this, but they tended to be ad hoc, and they were not long-term decisions. So that too, I think, will change now, because there's a strong demand that the NEC should not be under the Ministry of Home Affairs. I think it's possible to tackle law and order as well as development side by side. There's no reason why one should be contingent upon the other. I think that mindset is the mindset which is changing. I think if I'm right, then where we should aim for under this new dispensation is to have Guwahati restored as the economic and cultural and commercial hub of the Northeast. That is something that one would very much like to see happening. So that I leave it at that. Finally, I would say that the tribal mindset is also changing. They are realizing that insurgency does not work. And they are not clamoring for separate states as they used to do in the past. That is very important. They have seen development taking place in India. They have realized that they are being left behind. And so their mindsets are also changing. Finally, the MEA's mindset is also changing. I must say this. Because when I was in Shillong recently, I saw a very interesting thing. Our ambassador in Myanmar, Gautam Mukhopadhyay, had taken a delegation of 2 chief ministers from Myanmar, from the poor states, very poor backward states of Myanmar. He was leading a delegation in the Northeast. And he had spent a week traveling around the Northeast. And finally, they ended up in Shillong. And that is where I got a chance to talk to him. This is something that I do not think the ministry would have allowed in the past. If there was anything to be done in India, it would be done by the officials in India. But here you have now a ministry which is open to the idea of letting its ambassadors lead delegates from foreign countries, from the bordering countries, into India and actually take them around and talk about possible projects for the future. I think that's a wonderful thing. I want to say finally that I think this is my third final, but anyway, Northeast is a microcosm of India with all her splendid color and diversity. If it can successfully spearhead a low-caste policy by leveraging the people-to-people links and use these links for common developmental goals, not only of Northeast but also of countries surrounding the Northeast, then that will be a great feather in the cap of Indian diplomacy. I think the immediate neighboring countries, of course, that I have in mind are Bhutan, Nepal, China, Myanmar, and Bangladesh. All of them will benefit equally, and I think that will be a wonderful thing to happen. This win-win cooperation will take Indian diplomacy to new heights. I don't want to over-exaggerate, but it can. It has the potential to take it to the heights that it used to enjoy in the times of Jawaharlal Nehru. I believe it can be done. So it deserves at least a chance. Sorry, so sorry for my voice. Anyway, that's the end. And now, if I may call upon...
No, please.
Sorry?
Hello.
Oh, okay, fine.
There is a video message from General V.K. Singh, Honorable Minister of Statistics and Program Implementation, which will be now screened.
This particular conference is being held to deliberate on a lot of things, and especially the Look East policy of India. The Look East policy of India envisages that we build greater cooperation, greater trade structure, greater connectivity, and better people-to-people contacts with our eastern neighbors. And in this, Northeast part of India assumes a greater role in ensuring that this particular policy carries on. As part of this policy, Kaladan project was conceived, in which through Mizoram along the Kaladan river, we were to utilize Sitwe port. The project is moving, slowly, but at the moment we are trying to ensure that after the new government came in, it gets the required push. We are also looking at the trilateral highway which will connect Bangladesh, India, Myanmar, and subsequently join up with a road which is coming from Thailand to Myanmar. All this is part of our effort in which we bring in better context with our eastern neighbors so that trade flows, tourist traffic takes place, and there is a greater engagement with the eastern part that exists on our eastern borders. Look East policy is beneficial to us, there is no doubt, and I'm quite sure when you all deliberate upon it, it will come out as to what should be done, which is more than what is being done now. I wish this conference great success. You have very many people who are coming, not only from India but also abroad, and it is going to be a conference that will be really meaningful. I congratulate Symbiosis for organizing this conference. Thank you very much.
Now I call upon Mr. Bez Barua, Chairman of the Northeast Council. Member.
Good afternoon, everyone. And in fact, my very respected friend, I'm looking forward to hearing him, Mr. Dua. He's a little worried about his flight this evening. So I thought that I should not stand in between, and I said I will rush through, and I'm cutting away with all the formalities of addressing everyone. Oh, okay. So it is doubly ensured. But I was thinking that after such brilliant speeches for the last 2 days, I could just say that I'm speechless and end my speech there. And but I find that the chairperson, though she has lost her voice, indomitable spirit, she has taken away almost all that I wanted to speak. In spite of that, let me say at the beginning that having come to Symbiosis University has been a great revelation, a great something I did not really expect, such a beautiful place, and moreover, what I have seen is a professionalism around everything that I have been in touch with has really impressed me. And that's why the first thing I did was that as a step carrying forward this conference motto and the subject that I am dealing with today about Northeast, I thought that we could I had another hat, as the minister had mentioned in the morning, about the Northeast people's concern in the metropolitan cities. And while doing that, I had found and I had looked into the question, why so many students have to get out of this region? Why so many people for just 5,000 rupees leaving their families and friends and have to go outside, so many? Then I thought that we have not been able to provide those infrastructure which we need. And if Symbiosis and others could have such institutions set up in this area, that will be a great service. I am so grateful that Mr. Majumdar has responded very, very positively to this idea, and I hope Symbiosis will be really looking at Northeast as their way of looking to Southeast. I am going to speak today, since I have to. This is a very long journey, it's a long way to cover, but at the beginning I wanted to say that perhaps we are ending the conference at the beginning, because we should have started with the Northeast. Everyone says Southeast starts from Northeast, and that's where it is. I will try to very briefly mention the 3 C's, culture, connectivity, and commerce, that you have been talking about from yesterday, basically showing what Northeast expects this Look East policy to do, and what is their expectation, what is happening on ground, and what is the way forward. I have a few slides. I would have perhaps skipped those first few slides, but for the fact that I had seen tremendous amount of ignorance about the Northeast, and that's why I thought that I'll just put those slides in here in case some people still feel that those information are necessary. We are 8 now, and somehow I don't understand why we call Sikkim a brother, but I think it is the Indian mindset that we want to have a son. I have faced this again and again. I have 2 daughters, and every time I introduce myself and people will ask me, what about your children? I said 2 daughters. Oh, no son. I see. So I think that is what we also try to look at Northeast. And this is what I am using. One philosopher, Charles Handy, had a very readable book and very nice book called The Age of Unreason, where he has said that you cannot make any generalization or predictions for the future. And for the Northeast, the only generalization you can make is that you cannot make any generalization. The great variety is something you have to understand if you talk about the Northeast. You understand, many of you know all these things, but it is worthwhile mentioning that this is the variety that we have. The tribal population, we talk about 19% to 95%. Then we have the Siddle tribes population, so many dialects, language, etc. there. But in Nagaland, there are 16 major tribes. They cannot talk to each other. That is the type of variety we have. They do not have a common language. So they use what is called Nagamese, which is my language. I tried to speak to Nagamese once, and they said that you better speak in English. That is the type of variety we have. And the geographical homogeneity, of course, this is the most important factor we have to keep in mind so far as look-east policy is concerned. This is what the minister had also mentioned in the morning, that we have such long corridors, borders with the neighbors, particularly Myanmar and Bangladesh. And I believe for Northeast, these are the 2 states, two countries which are very, very vital, very important. What are the perceptions of the world outside about Northeast? So it is a difficult region, it's a remote region, it's underdeveloped, and it's insurgency prone and insecure, which all of it is true. I don't have time to go into why it is that perception, whether it is correct in all senses or not, but generally you can say that these are the perceptions we have. And the Northeast also have some perception about the outside world, and that is what we have felt is that the sense of neglect, which has been going on for years, then the sense of alienation, that we are not counted, and that sense of suspicion. That suspicion is a very dangerous thing which is creeping in even today. The British had created the inner line to protect the culture and ethnicity of the people, tribal people, and that was 100 years back. And today, surprisingly, Meghalaya, Manipur, they are saying that we want that ILP back. Why? And that is why what we have to look into. Since it is not the topic for discussion today, I am not going into that, but that's a very serious factor which is creeping in. That's coming from a sense of suspicion about their future, about their identity, about their culture being eclipsed by the inroad of people who are not so many welcome there. There's a sense of insecurity, great sense of insecurity that our future is at stake. Assam feels that in the Assam Accord, the only clause Assam Accord they wanted was that our culture and our culture should be protected. That's a part of the Assam Accord. The major state felt threatened. What about the others? These are the feelings there. No analysis of the Northeast can leave out some of the socio-political and security dynamics. And the security dynamics, you have heard about insurgency of various types, and development come or security first. I think we have got out of that syndrome now. We are saying that both have to go together. Security is important, but development is more important. We have seen that development perhaps can bring more secure conditions than. In fact, I had been in part of 3 ambushes in Mizoram when Mizoram decided, saying that we are not part of India, we'll fight for independence. They fought for 20 years, suffered. I have seen that suffering, everything there. And when after 20 years they become peaceful, and I met the chief minister after 30 years of those incidents. The chief minister happened to be the person who had conducted some of those ambushes on us. And the message he told me was that, look, Our slogan today is peace, space, and that's the message we have to carry forward from the Northeast. Things have changed, but even today, everyone in Assam and everywhere will keep on talking to you how they had to fight for the first refinery in Assam. Moreover, it is not the first, the second one. The first one was built by the British. After independence, the first refinery in Assam, we had to fight. For the bridge over Brahmaputra, we had to fight. We had to fight for the broad gauge line to be extended from Bangaigaon. Things have changed now. We have a lot of money. We have a lot of development. But the sense of grievance does not go away quickly, only by money which is coming there, not always wisely spent, not always honestly spent. Problems, we have a development scenario, and this was talked about, the economic imprisonment that we talk about, is a partition created for us, and just now you have heard about how we have gone down in development indicators. And these development indicators have gone down, and the people feel that what have we got after independence if the development indicators have gone down? And that creates further sense of alienation and grievances. Not always true, perhaps, not always that we don't have much to do. We have a lot to do putting the searchlight inwards to ourselves. What have we done? Have we been able to do that part? Still, these are the factors you cannot ignore when you talk about the Northeast. What has happened is that we have seen that this is a scenario where we are so good, so fertile in that area. We have so much of water bodies. We import fish from Andhra Pradesh. The total import is coming to 2,000 to 3,000 crores a year. And then we have very high, only jobs that have been created are only in the employments in the government sector. But let me not go into all those things today. No income generation is the major development problems in the Northeast today. And the contradiction is that we have such great resources, forest, petroleum, 1/5 of the petroleum, tea, and the major tea growing area. But the problem is that the multiplier effect of tea and petroleum has not been to create development in that region. They have been giving income, all right, but they have not played that role which should have been played by these major industries in creating employment, education, and employment and income in that region. 63,000 megawatt worth of hydel power. We still are fighting on issues, how to implement them, and we have tapped only 11% of them. 30%, 34% of the water resources, and the list can go on. The so fertile land, and one British officer had written that if you had left your walking stick in the forest of Assam, after 1 week, if you go to retrieve it, you will find it sprouting, and that land is importing food grains and everything today. Why is the place so underdeveloped? This is the question we have handicrafts, handlooms, tourism, they call paradise unexplored, immense horticulture, floriculture, everything, but still the underdevelopment is a problem. To catch up with the rest of the world, the vision document Northeast 2020 said that we will need growth at 13%. If rest of India grows at 6%, we will have to grow at 13% to catch up with the rest of India in maybe another 20 years. But the investment required is this amount. So a huge investment which is nowhere inside. But the problem is, even if it was inside, Government of India said that, okay, we'll give you 10% of each ministry's fund so that you can utilize it for the Northeast. Can you believe it? That unutilized fund was to go to a non-lapsable fund. It cannot be spent by the ministry. That non-lapsable fund has gone to 13,000 crores. That means we have not been able to utilize what is due to us. Why? Because that has not been studied as yet. Is it because of our inefficiency? Because we do not have the capacity, we do not have the projects, we do not have the proposals, or is it just because there is some gap somewhere? But this is one area which needs attention. Government development plans, therefore, have to look at self-sufficiency of the region, encourage private investment, pragmatic implementation of a Northeast industrial policy, and identifying the comparative advantage on which to build. We have been hearing Now, there is a industrial development corridor possible today. There is gas and oil that is produced. We have what is called those gas cracker project, which has tremendous millions of jobs can be created, millions of industries can come up, which is nowhere in sight today. But we are going to produce that polymer in the next year, and that's based on that. I heard the Japanese delegation talking about Make in India. That they had Prime Minister Modi had an agreement with Japan on to focus on the Northeast, and it will be a very ideal situation if the Japanese investment could look at this industrial corridor based on oil and gas, which is being produced there, which is being flared now, which is now being transformed into polymer, and that can give you a very high value, high quality polyester, plastic products, which can change the entire Northeast if we link it up with economic zones and with development zones. And of course, we have to harness the hydel potentials. What is the Look-East policy comes as a phrase, this thing. It was done in 2007, linking Northeast, and everyone talks about the breeze to the Southeast Asia, etc. Those things are well talking about. Why Northeast looks at the Look-East policy? Because we believe that Southeast begins in the Northeast, natural geographical extension of the border. We believe that the old spice route, which has touched these fringes of Northeast, can be created again. We believe that we can leverage this shared history, culture, and ethnicity for greater people-to-people contact, which will bring more commerce and more investment, etc. Then we believe that Look-East policy, these are the three main planks on which the expectations raised. It will free the economic imprisonment. We will have greater access not only to the Southeast Asia, but more important, integration with the rest of India with greater access, reviving the access we had earlier, which we have lost because of partition. These are the most important expectations. And the other important expectation, which the minister mentioned in the morning, I was very happy that he did mention it, that the borders have always been borders of insurgency, drugs, trafficking, etc., all those things which should not happen. We believe the changes in Myanmar and Bangladesh will change Northeast to a great extent, and already it has been showing signs of changing the geopolitical situation. And that's why that is what we want our borders to be. And the ground reality is a mere slogan, people say, and nothing has happened. It's a lip service, Mr. Verghese had said, and the trade has been minuscule. Let me have a look at what is happening on the field. In fact, as everyone has been telling you, lots has been happening on the field. The trilateral highway, India-Myanmar, then colored and multimodal project, India-Myanmar rail linkages, and the list can go on. Lots of things are happening, which is not happening at the speed that we had expected, but things are happening. But still, we say it is just a slogan. Why? Because that connectivity corridor, is it going to transform into development corridor, is the key questions that we are asking. And we don't see any sign of the connectivity corridor becoming development corridor unless we do a lot of things, which I will very briefly mention in the next few minutes. Too many agencies at this moment, and that's one area we have to do, that we have to link up too many agencies. Some agencies will talk about the Steel Road, others will say, no, we cannot go anywhere near China. Now we have to get out of those things. And okay, I will do the 2 minutes. But I was looking at the watch there, the clock there, because I think my time of 20 minutes has been curtailed. Okay. I do not know. That's the tragedy of Northeast. Always you expect something, and you are so that no, you get half of that only. Sorry. I will take little more than 2 minutes, but I will not delay proceedings too much. The most important thing I would like to mention here is that need for the Northeast to be involved. The people of the Northeast to be involved, and they must know what is happening, why this policy is happening, is this policy we want, and how this policy is being implemented. Are we being part of that? That is not there. I want institutional linkages for the policy planners, policy makers with the Northeast. The position of trade, if you go into, you will find that this Bangladesh and Myanmar, India's trade is very, very small, but the worrying part is that even that small thing in Northeast contribution has been going down. Now, of the Southeast Asian trade, our portion is extremely insignificant. That's why, because there is perhaps a mismatch between the demand in the Southeast Asian countries and our supply capabilities and our competitiveness and productivity. No one has studied. I would like to suggest that we make a study of the demand that is coming out in this because of this connectivity, and what part of the demand we can supply and how we can prepare ourselves to supply that one through economic zones and others to be created. There are serious supply side bottlenecks. Raw material, in Bangladesh, we are trading with Bangladesh. Our place is supposed to be full of horticulture, ideal for horticulture, and we are importing from Bangladesh juice and canned fruits and other things because we do not have any value addition of the products that we have. It's not bad that we are doing that, but I was thinking that we should think of joint collaboration with Bangladesh on many of the areas where we have complementaries. For example, we are sending them boulders, which are being crushed in Bangladesh, received to Tripura as chips, and similarly, we are giving them limestone, which is being made into cement and brought to Tripura as cement. Now, these are areas where we can have tremendous joint investment possibilities. We have joint investment possibilities in Myanmar in a great way on medical facilities. A large number of them come to Manipur for all those facilities. We are unable to provide them. Why not have some joint ventures producing all those pharmaceuticals in Manipur, or producing those things and putting up hospitals in Myanmar, nearby areas, helping both our income, their development and welfare and prosperity in the border. Their transaction costs are tremendous, and if we have to do any trade in the Northeast, and we have to go through these border areas, and not through Kolkata, because Chittagong is already out. If we can get into Chittagong, that's a different thing. Now, point is, if we get something from Mumbai to Kolkata, it costs less than getting from Kolkata to Tripura. In that situation, we cannot go up to Kolkata to get our trading done. We have to use those ports that we have. And how do we use them? The transaction costs are so high, facilities are so poor that you cannot just do any trade there. We have to quickly put them in operation, get rid of all those unnecessary hassles of regulations, etc., and then trade to flourish. Vibrant and economic activity in the 1,400 to 1,500 crores worth of informal trade going on in the borders, many of them between people to people. We have to encourage them, we have to enhance them. At the same time, we have to see that informal trade, which has been against us through third country products, which have to be stopped. These are challenges we have. I talked about facilitation. Let me not spend any more time. Way forward is to study the demand and plan professional assessment and production mechanism like SEZs. I have mentioned about that. The present trade shows a lot of complementarity. We can have joint ventures. ASEAN Highway, we talk about tourism. I cannot go without talking about tourism. Tourism has been my hobby, has spent so many years on tourism. And ASEAN Highway, we say, would be the new Silk Road. There's nowhere around. The kilometer shown here is wrong, perhaps, but what has happened is that it is not being projected as a tourism highway. We have to do something to make the ASEAN Highway a really tourism highway. The biggest outbound market of the world is to the Southeast Asia, and 1 million to 2 million people, Buddhist tourists, come only to Thailand. And can we not get a little bit of those tourists to our region? We can surely do that, and we can create tourism zones that supply demand of the tourism area. The Buddhist circuits we have to create along with Bangladesh, along with Bhutan, along with Nepal, and that will be a tremendous Buddhist circuit to be developed, which can easily, it has to be done at the private sector. Tourism is private sector driven, and I hope it will be operational soon. And we have to get linkages to the Southeast Asian institutions. Otherwise, there is a Southeast Asian Tourism Forum. Northeast is not linked with that at all. We must establish linkages to those institutions. And air connectivity is critical because 97% of the tourists to India come by air. And look at Northeast or East. Kolkata got only 4% of that. And if we can get something out of the Northeast, making Guwahati the hub, and creating linkages to Bhutan, Nepal, and seamless integration within Northeast is so crucial. I had to go to Dimapur, which is the Nagaland, just before coming here. I thought I would just fly from Guwahati to Dimapur as I used to do, but I was told that no, to go to Dimapur I have to go to Kolkata and then fly back. So I had to take a journey of 10 hours by road. Now this is, unless we can get that internal integration within Northeast, integration with the rest of India of Northeast, then only the third stage of integration with Southeast Asia will be meaningful. Brahmaputra waterways is crucial. I thought I would spend little time on that, but I would not do that now. But Brahmaputra waterways is so crucial for Northeast that it can change the complete complexion. It may help also in flood control. It can help in tourism. It can help in everything, irrespective of anything that is happening in China. I have talked about synergy. Cultural, I'll mention only one thing about people-to-people contact. We keep on talking about great contact with ethnicity and other things that we have with the Southeast Asia. But do they also realize that they have such great connection with this Northeast? I don't think it's true. And that's why I was very happy that the professor from Thailand who mentioned about institutional linkages, I hope we will take very strong and careful note of building such institutional linkages, linking Northeast institutions with Southeast Asia, where we have such tremendous ties. So many tribes have come and settled in the Northeast, and they are Ahoms, Thais, the relationship, I can go on for hours, and we have to establish those linkages. So I just have to say that great potential, and we have to, time is of essence, implementation is the key, and I don't tire of quoting this one, that you see, you do not, unless we are integrated, unless we have everything in order, we are ready for getting this connectivity transformed into development corridors, then we will have adverse impact and the alienation will be stronger. Now, this is what I would try to leave you with. I am very fond of saying this thing. Our judgment takes place every day. We don't have any time to lose. Thank you very much, and a great opportunity to be with you.
Thank you, Mr. Pesbarwa. No, you gave us a lot of very good information, very passionately delivered. Now we are rather short of time, and if I may ask Mr. H.K. Dua, Member of Parliament, to please address us. I would allow you 15 minutes, Mr. Dua. Is that?
I'll stick to the watch. Some of my time has been taken.
You have to.
Dr. Majumdar, members of the faculty, and students. I'm very happy to be here. And this is second visit to the Symbiosis campus. I was there earlier, and the memories are still fresh, and this adds to the memories. The ambiance of this campus is so good that I feel like studying here. But I'm sure Dr. Vidya might disqualify me from joining it, unless she is very considerate. We're discussing important subject, although it is Northeast, looks very distant from here, and even from Delhi, I can tell you, it is very distant in their mindsets. It reminds me, years ago, I happened to be editor of the Hindustan Times, and I'm president of Editors Guild. Some of us thought that we should fight, we should try to understand Northeast more. People there are feeling alienated, although alienation is somewhat less now than it was at that time. The correspondents could report only what security forces are doing and what the insurgents are doing in ambushes. I'm glad Mr. Barua, with so much of study of the Northeast, has survived those 3 ambushes, and there are many more. We decided to have the Editors Guild meeting in Northeast so that the editors should be better educated so that the newspapers at that time could cover it properly, the area, which is vital in itself and for the country. We had a dialogue with the local people of various shades of opinion, administrators, emerging civil society at that time, NGOs, and some NGOs I'm sure were representing insurgent groups also, security forces, tea planters, workers in the tea. So 3 days we had intensive dialogue, which was being held in Nehu hostel, with guest house provided by Professor Minal Miri. In one of the coffee sessions, as it happens in the dialogues, some students, volunteers were helping us as avidly as they are doing it here in Symbiosis. I asked one student a very cliche kind of a question. Why don't people join the mainstream, people in this part of the country? Why don't they join the mainstream? He made me speechless by saying, "Sir, your mainstream is so polluted, and you want us to join it." But a very sensitive person otherwise. I had no answer except to seek his help. Come, please help us clean the polluted mainstream. Join it all the same, but help us clean it. I found he was very perceptive students. So was his girlfriend. Later on they got married, completed their education, settled in Delhi. Both are working there and with children, a very happy couple and a very happy Indians as they were there. But the remark that he said about what mainstream showed how alienated they are and what they feel of us. We look at things from India's point of view. People in that country, at that part of the country, how they are feeling, we are not looking at it. One has to understand how the people there are looking at the rest of the country. Then possibly a symbiosis of the minds of the people there and people here can take place. So connectivity we were talking about yesterday and today is not necessarily physical connectivity of the roads, the bridges, the links. We have been, as somebody said, spaghetti of solutions and connectivity links we are drawn up on the drawing board. But connectivity of minds is very, very important, which I'm afraid is taking time. It's better than before. Alienation levels are much fewer than before. With the kind of contribution Symbiosis has made, other institutions have made, and the promise of 10,000 scholarship for the students there from that part of the country to the rest part of the country, I think will help in this connection. But the minds must meet. And there is a problem there with the mindsets of we people who are not belonging to the Northeast. Even in bureaucracy, you send a promising officer, young officer, or a senior officer, and more senior than younger people, they post them in the Northeast, they think it's a punishment posting. The mindset travels. It's not just because the families are opposed to it. Young officers who are not married even, so they think it's a reflection on their capability. They would like to push files in North Block and South Block, but rather than work among the people where they can be of use. The reason is the mindset of the people here. Many people in power in Delhi, in other states, they're indifferent to Northeast. They're ignorant, indifferent. I won't use the word callous, but certainly indifferent are there. They're not bothered about it. And when something happens there, or channels telecast a serious incident, then they protest. The reason being the influence of the security establishment and Delhi's thinking. It is certainly situation was bad when 1967, I suppose, when insurgency began in Mizoram. We remember we got the news when we were covering election as correspondents, and the news broke out when the election results were coming. Situation was bad, and Mizoram is one of the most peaceful states in the Northeast. There are other areas, except for Manipur, where alienation has become sheer anger, sometimes uncontrollable. The job of the people in the government, as well as outside of the NGOs, those who think about the welfare of the nation, is to see to it that alienation doesn't turn into anger. And in anger, even if it turns into anger, I don't think this nation is so weak, morally or socially or politically or administratively, that it should find insecure in when few children, our own children, display anger. One of the angry child in the family doesn't mean the family is going berserk, but that's often the reaction, is almost as if the rest of the country is siege to the activities of the few people there, whom you don't feel their own self. The feeling of they and us is still strong and more here than there. Their attitudes are changing. The people here are not able to change their mindset. If somebody marries, posted there, and marries to local girl there, or they say he has married a tribal. Why? The people who are working there from the Northeast in Delhi, in particular in the service sector, or in Bangalore, in Bombay, in Pune, where the large number of students from the Northeast are there. They're so efficient, so courteous, so polite, so fast in their work, that you feel proud of them as Indians. Yet, the prejudice remains of their ethnic origin. As the minister pointed out candidly this morning, one of the better speeches what I have heard lately, one of the best ministerial speech I have heard during the last few years. No cliches. Yet he went to the core of the subject without meaning any offense. Because he was dealing with mindsets. He understood, he spoke from the heart. The challenge is still there, and that is that this kind of event certainly helps to understand it better. And if we have heard presentation from Mr. Barua and Navrekha, we understand it better. We're discussing Northeast, importance of Northeast as a bridge, as a matter of policy in East-look policy or Act East policy. I thought Northeast is itself important for us. East-look policy or West-look policy, that apart, that we can design in South Block, many drafts can come and more policies come, and it's very important we are looking East. Important for the China factor, important in our own old cultural links, important for the growth of Indian economy. But are we to look for growth on Indian economy and look at the East policy? Northeast economy should be looked at in itself as an aim. And then we should draw up the plans for the Northeast economy. Not because it's part of a bigger Southeast Asian or East look designed for an Indian policy maker. Then again, there is a problem there. I consider it a little unfortunate attitude. Northeast is important even otherwise, not only for security reasons, not only for working out an Asian policy for India, but itself is a part of the country which has been neglected. In 67 years, it has suffered the neglect. We must make amends for that. And Mr. Bez Barua has listed so many, and if the kind of the report I'm told he has presented still isn't under the wraps, should have been released by now. I'm going to demand it's being tabled in Parliament, your report, unless you give me a copy. on your own. Now, that itself is going to list, I'm sure, measures which the country should take, and I'm sure it will be implemented. So many projects which have been listed in area of connectivity. Implementation is slow. There's no doubt about it. We have been hearing it over the years. This Kaladan project, for instance, is one example. There are others also. Have the sea link to reach Mizoram. Well, we are finding an alternative route. But there is no substitute for thinking that Northeast has to have links with Burma, Myanmar, as well as with Bangladesh, if you want real regional solutions to the problem and not just solutions thought of in Delhi, in Yojana Bhavan, Delhi. There is no solution for Northeastern economy as part of East Look or otherwise in itself unless you have cooperation with Myanmar and cooperation with Bangladesh. Bangladesh cooperation was slow in coming because we have been slow in reacting to demands from Bangladesh. Look at what we did in Teesta agreement. You have arrived at an agreement. The Prime Minister of the country was going to Dhaka and the Chief Minister of Bengal refused to join. I am out of the Teesta understanding. This is the attitude, kind of things we preferred Bangladesh interest, West Bengal interest to wider national interest, which was very important for us. On land boundary agreement, we sat for years to ratify it. I don't know what we are afraid of. Just a few villages going from here to there where population was also not shifting. They're not demanding shift of the population. Few bighas of zameen going from here to there, we refused to ratify an agreement. And last session, not this one, the one earlier, the land boundary agreement draft bill, when the constitution was to be amended, it required constitutional amendment boundary agreement. It was torn apart by the opposition. We have cleared that in the committee stage this time, and the government in power, I suppose, will bring a constitutional amendment this session perhaps, or certainly the next session. And I hope that Bangladesh, our West Bengal government, does not block the way earlier. In the committee, I should report happily that the attitude of the Trinamool Congress member was positive this time. But one doesn't know in Bangladesh, West Bengal moods are very volatile. So at the last minute also, the drafts presented to Parliament can be torn apart. I hope not, it doesn't happen. Now, unless you improve relations with Bangladesh, Northeast economy cannot improve. So the relationship with Bangladesh is important for many other reasons. Here is a comparatively liberal regime is in power. If you don't sustain it with whatever the measures we have to take, it's not in the interest of security environment. The jihadis will take over. And then your links with Northeast, your problems here for eastern border, and they will make a mockery of our East Look policy. Same thing for Myanmar. We went in for normal relations with Myanmar much later. We were waiting for democracy to dawn there first, and then we'll have relationship. I'm all for democracy everywhere, including in our own country. But I think we waited too long before we became practical. By going there, by people who had rejected military regime of Myanmar earlier, they all revised their policy. We were the last, we were next door. We have been trying to gain, but economy of the Northeast will not improve unless you think in regional terms. We're talking regional cooperation in the East Look policy or Act East policy. But Northeast economic development will also take place when you have a regional solution where Northeastern states' economy is integrated with Myanmar economy, economic development, and Bangladesh economic development. That kind of designs may look little futuristic, but I don't think it is that futuristic, considering others are changing their mindset. We have also to change. regional solutions you might think, well, it encroaches upon the borders, questions of sovereignty. I'll just take 2-3 minutes more. You won't have to make another trip. Regional solutions have got to be trusted. They cut across the borders, and borders become irrelevant. But future economic development of Asia is bound to lead to some dilutions of concept of sovereignty in citizens' mind or policymakers' mind. Unless borders become irrelevant for the day-to-day commerce, for interactions of the people across the border, you are going to have more frictions between countries, more tensions, and that will nullify all the policies you may design which are there in the drawing board. For instance, I'll just give 1 or 2 examples, theoretical. Supposing India sets up a big hospital on the borders of Bangladesh and India in the Northeast. A very big hospital, well equipped like AIIMS, which can give health care to our own people who have been neglected. Excellent health care should have been given in the Northeast and has not been given. And let people from Myanmar also join in. Let them be treated there in the hospital. Look at the kind of atmosphere it will create on both sides of the border. Same thing with Bangladesh, Tripura border. Set up a class 1 hospital there, which can treat patients on both the sides. What's wrong with that? Even mobile ambulance vans can go there, bring the patient to this hospital at Dhumri or somewhere else, which place can be chosen. Now, so many projects can be thought of, people-oriented projects, which are useful for the people on both sides of the border, and even if borders become irrelevant. And so what? That concept of irrelevance of borders in human welfare, I think, should be accepted as early as possible. I won't take more because another slip will come, and this time it will be pink slip. One little more in policy making in East Asia. We have to involve the states of the Northeast in designing their policies if we think the Northeast is a bridge. I wonder how many chief ministers have been taken into confidence in the detailed effort which goes in designing various schemes. Again, they have to implement with central help. They have no money. Central help will be given. But even for the delivery of the scheme and implementing the scheme, you need the state's help. Those states should be part of the policy making, decision making. They do attend the Northeastern Regional Council, where Mr. Barua is very much present and his guidance is available to all of them. But they should be part of the East Look policy designing also. It will make a difference. So the people of Northeast should be trusted to design national and international policy for the country, and that will be really symbiosis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dua. Can I now ask Major General Namgyal, the Ambassador of Bhutan to India.
Respected Dr. Majumdar, distinguished panelists, members of the faculty, students, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great privilege and pleasure for me to take part in this session of the Conference on India's Look East and Act East policy. I would like to congratulate Symbiosis University for organizing this conference so well, and also thank them for inviting me to take part in this important event. I will briefly speak on the Look East policy from the perspective of Bhutan's special relations with India. For us in Bhutan, India is our closest friend and neighbor. It was India that encouraged us to come out of self-imposed isolation and gave us generous technical and financial assistance when we began planned development in 1961. It was India that helped us to join the United Nations in 1971 and even set up our mission in New York. Indian assistance enabled us to achieve tremendous progress in every area of our socio-economic development. India remains by far our largest development partner as we strive to achieve our goal of economic self-reliance. As the land that gave us Lord Buddha and Guru Padmasambhava, who is revered in our country as the second Buddha, it is natural for the people of Bhutan to feel a close cultural bond with India. Geography has made it even more natural for us to develop very close economic and political relations with each other. Bhutan is located on the south-facing side of the mighty Himalayas. We are a landlocked and an entirely mountainous country. Our borders with China in the north run along very high mountains and rugged terrain, while our borders with India in the south open up to the plains of Assam and West Bengal. Our access for trade with the outside world is through the Indian port of Kolkata. Transit for trade with our close neighbors, Bangladesh and Nepal, also goes through India. More than 80% of our trade is with India. As a close friend and neighbor, we look upon India's huge size as an asset, and we welcome her rise as a major economic and political power. What is good for our closest friend and neighbor is good for us. Bhutan stands to gain from India's progress and prosperity. In Bhutan, we feel a very close affinity and friendship towards the people of the northeastern states of India. We share borders with 3 of these states, Sikkim, Assam, and Arunachal Pradesh. The other northeastern states are also located very close to us. Like Bhutan, most of these states have mountains and hills and rich forest cover with similar flora and fauna. We have close cultural bonds and our people look alike in many ways. We share similar potential for economic growth through hydropower development, tourism, horticulture, floriculture, and organic farming. We look forward to seeing our friends and neighbors in the northeastern region of India enjoying more peace and prosperity. It is in this spirit that we look upon the benefits of India's Look East policy, in particular at the prospects of greater economic progress for India's northeastern region and its emergence as a gateway to Southeast Asia. With a population of 600 million and a GDP of 2.5 trillion, Southeast Asia is a very dynamic region. So it is good strategy to reach out to this region, which in turn finds India's political profile and huge economic potential increasingly more attractive. Both sides are aware that closer economic cooperation and engagement between Southeast Asia and India will be mutually beneficial. As Prime Minister Modi and his government have said, the time has come to act east. In this scenario, India's northeastern states are strategically placed as a gateway to Southeast Asia. 4 of the northeastern states have borders with Myanmar, the westernmost member of ASEAN, and the other states are also located very close to it. Therefore, the northeastern states are a natural bridgehead for road and rail connectivity with Southeast Asia. Apart from the proposed Asian highway, work is underway on a trilateral highway between India, Myanmar, and Thailand. Connectivity is key to the success of regional cooperation, whether it is within South Asia or between countries of our region and the nations of the vibrant region of Southeast Asia. India being a very vast country, connectivity with the rest of the nation is also very important for its northeastern states to develop their full economic potential. With the right opportunity, India's northeast is poised to grow and prosper. The region is blessed with great natural beauty, good natural resources, and rich biodiversity. Most of the states have retained more than 60% of their land under forest cover. Assam has oil and tea, Tripura is one of the largest producers of rubber, and Arunachal Pradesh has very big hydropower potential. In fact, most of the states have the potential to produce hydropower potential beyond their own requirements. The Northeast has breathtaking beauty along with rich flora and fauna. The soil is fertile for agriculture, and there is tremendous scope for horticulture, floriculture, and even medicinal plants. Tourism has huge potential in all the states. For many years, security issues and difficulties in connectivity have limited economic progress in the Northeast. We all know that peace and security is a prerequisite for economic prosperity. At the same time, the prospects of economic growth will also have a positive impact on ensuring a more peaceful environment. The situation, I think, is now looking up for the Northeast as India focuses on reviving growth and realizing its vast potential to become a great economic power. The Northeast is an important part of India, and it must also grow and prosper along with the rest of the country. Recognizing this, Prime Minister Narendra Modi spent 3 days there during his recent visit and focused on improving connectivity for the Northeast. He announced that Rs 28,000 crores would be provided for new railway lines in the region. Rs 5,000 crores was sanctioned for 2G mobile telephone coverage, and another Rs 5,000 crores for improving the power projects in the region. The implementation of the Look East policy covers many areas of cooperation and engagement with each other. And this cooperation will take place at various levels between actors and different states on both sides. Connectivity by sea and air is waiting to be further enhanced as engagement grows. Given their location as a land link to Southeast Asia, India's Northeast states also have an important role to play for the success of the Look East policy. This policy, in turn, will provide a good opportunity for these states to boost economic activities in their region and make it an area of growth and prosperity. As I said before, Bhutan stands to gain from India's progress and prosperity. We are therefore very happy and excited at the prospect of seeing our close friends and neighbors in India's Northeast benefit and prosper from the Look East policy. We wish them well as this policy moves from Look East to Act East under the dynamic leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his government. We have all heard the inspiring address this morning by His Excellency Kiren Rijiju, Minister of State for Home Affairs. He has clearly defined what needs to be done for the Northeast to emerge as an important and prosperous region of India. The Minister embodies all the outstanding qualities of the people of the Northeast. With his dynamic presence at the center in Delhi and the commitment given by Prime Minister Modi to act on the Look East policy, the time and opportunity has come for bringing a better future to the northeastern states of India. But time does not stand still, and the opportunity must be seized now to take the Northeast forward on the path of peace, progress, and prosperity. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador. And last but not least, can I ask Mr. Sabyasachi Datta, Director, Asian Confluence, Shillong.
You know, it's not easy to speak at the very penultimate speaker of such an important conference. I'm reminded of a story in which a great teacher was telling his students, "Tell me what is the difference, what is truth and what is illusion?" And one student got up and said, "What you say might be the truth and what I'm seeing is the illusion." I can probably not speak too much of a truth because we have heard it all throughout this luminaries of speakers. And being the last session, you might be seeing me as an illusion here, right in the back, many of you. But nevertheless, I'll try to make a very short and brief presentation. How much time do I have, Madam Chair? 10 minutes. So the challenge in front of the Northeast is to articulate the truth in the least possible amount of time. We have very little time in our hands now. There is a lot of work being done on connectivity by the government, and there is a vision right at the bottom now, right at the top by our Prime Minister. And Mr. Majumdar yesterday said of a rising sun, the second rising sun. And this is a political space. And then there is the economic space, which I think is also going to be highly fertilized. But may I call upon many in this room, and particularly my young student friends, to join me in creating an emotional space to bind this region of India with the rest of the country. And this emotional space is intelligent. It is full of creativity, full of out-of-the-box ideas. And I'm happy to report to you that through some of the work that we are doing, there's a lot of good people out there doing a lot of good things we don't hear about. Well, in order to do justice, first, a little lesson from geography. Geography is king. We cannot choose our neighbors. And this nebulous idea, which is a block of states called the Northeast, but in the Northeast, there is nothing called look east. It is look west, look north, look south, and look east. Tripura, for example, and Meghalaya, for example, has to look south. Manipur has to look east. Arunachal has to look north. And for the whole of the region, we have to look west towards India, the rest of the Indian states, Bhutan and Nepal. So in that sense, we really need to have look north, south, east, west, and a real global vision. And there is this articulation of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. But I must commend Shri Majumdar for also putting the qualifier right on top of this hall with his Udara Charitam to Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. I think we need to change our mindset. We need to increase the depth and dimension of our character in all parts to deal with the challenges that the Northeast faces. Taking some lessons from history, the Northeast was never isolated. The Cholas and the Pallavas had great links. And the British view of the Northeast, this is a map of 1860, where they saw all the way till the Straits of Malacca, Burma onwards to the Straits of Malacca. I used to call it farther India. And Hindustan, comprised of the great Bengal presidencies and the Madras presidencies and the Bombay presidency and the Punjab. And the Northeast, what we constitute the Northeast today, was at the center of Asia at that time. It was not some corner of Asia, some corner of the country. It was one ecosystem. May I say that the Northeast is a real confluence of civilizations. It is here that the Indic meets the Sino, meets the Austroasiatic. There have been Western influences through the sea. And this confluence of cultures and races and DNAs and religions and foods and lifestyles and all kinds of leads us to a very important question of our times. Are we going to celebrate a confluence, or are we going to make it a clash of civilizations, as Huntington very famously wrote? And our Indian Udara Charitam to Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and the Eastern philosophies say that we need to celebrate confluences. The Prayag is celebrated. If Ganga is political, Yamuna is economic, then Saraswati is knowledge. And we need to gain the knowledge about our country. As our minister today very aptly said, it may be that we do not have knowledge about each other. India is a very diverse country. But the challenge in front of all of us is how do we educate ourselves and how do we educate each other on this very important dynamics that are playing out in very eventful times of today. Our scholar before this session on education spoke about education, thinking west and thinking east. And I believe that we need to shed the baggage of partition, and we need to forge a chemistry for success. And in that, we need to take this mantra forward and decolonize our education system. In the Northeast, in the framework of the Look East policy, is in a very unique place. It's a laboratory of the globe. I would say it's a global hotspot where so many Asian cultures are coming together. And it's a laboratory where we can really experiment with how do we answer and question, ask the right questions of our times and answer the right questions. How do we deal with identity versus globalization? How do we balance development with identity? I'll give you a few examples. recently, Manipur has started importing rice from Myanmar. And that was a result of a blockade that happened which would not allow them to get rice. So they figured that it's better to take rice from Myanmar. Tripura has managed to get power from Bangladesh and selling power back to Bangladesh now. Meghalaya is in the process of setting up tourism circuits, and we as the Asian Confluence, we are aiding the government to help set up tourism circuits which link India, Bangladesh and Myanmar. And probably this is one way of tourism in which we can unleash a constructive information system where we look at global issues in a local perspective. For example, Cherrapunji, which is the highest rainfall in the world, is suffering drought because of deforestation in Cherrapunji. All the rainwater goes down to Bangladesh and creates floods. So things like climatic factors have to be looked at in a local perspective. Local issues we need to look at in a regional perspective. Regional issues we need to look at in a national perspective. National issues we'll need to look at in a global perspective, and the cycle should continue. And if we can do that, I believe we can bridge the information gap. And my request to this audience is, can we rebrand Northeast from a place of conflict to a place of immense possibilities? And you know, I come from Shillong, a city which was once the educational capital of Shillong, of Eastern India. There are many, it is the rock capital of the world. There are many artists from all over the world coming there, performing. Manipur has had the Sangai festival, which was extremely successful. The Nagaland Hornbill Festival has been extremely successful. So wonderful things are happening. There are many entrepreneurs out there in all the states. Sikkim has actually the brother, and the son has done well, I think. Yes, sir. Is that Sikkim has actually made a great case for organic and eco-friendly industries and development. It's a zero plastic state. So in students, in this such a wonderful institution like Symbiosis, set up under the inspiring guidance of Shri Majumdar, I think you students have a great opportunity to have a laboratory in your own country, in our own country, to study the great questions of our times. There are many entrepreneurial opportunities. There is the Google Startup Group now, which has been very active in Northeast. They have been mining ideas, and a lot has been happening on that. And I'm happy to report to you that my organization, the Asian Confluence, we derive our name, I like to believe, of the Northeast as an Asian confluence, as a confluence of cultures of Asia and Asian thought, and Western influences are also there. So it is really a little globe, as Ambassador Nabreka said. And I think I invite you all to come, explore. And the last word about the Ishanya Center, sir. First of all, the name Ishanya. I commend you, Shri Majumdar, for setting up this Ishanya Center. Ishan also in our homes, we have heard it to be the place where we keep the deities. So if the Northeast, which is the Ishan cone of India, can be preserved, nurtured, I think the whole country will progress. And the Ishanya Center, with a lot of respect and regard, can do a lot of good work. And we from the Northeast would love to collaborate, to help, and to expose this wonderful kaleidoscope of cultures and possibilities and confluences that can answer some of the most vexing questions of our times. How do we balance growth with environment? How do we balance identity with globalization? How do we balance our foreign policy and security? How do we balance this whole balancing act? I think it's a great laboratory. And that probably can unleash a great physics of growth. Lastly, I think local politics have to realign to acting east. When Manipur imported rice, some of the political parties at the ground level protested. Last year, Meghalaya had the longest agitation in the name of the inner line permit to and the rhetoric given was, we don't want influx from Bangladesh. So I think there's a vision right at the top. There's a vision with ministers like Mr. Rijiju, whom we heard today, which was very inspiring. I think we need to take this advocacy forums to the lower levels of politics, and here educational institutions like Symbiosis and civil society organizations like us, I think we can do a lot with so many thought leaders to educate politicians, policymakers, activists, NGOs on the need to collaborate, the need to open up to a new rising sun. Thank you very much. I hope I've kept my time, sir.
Ambassador Devre will now wind up the session for us.
Thank you. Well, we are coming to the end of the two-day conference. Over the last 2 days, we had very intensive and frank discussions on a wide range of subjects related to the topic Look East, Act East policy, a bridge to the Asian neighborhood. There were a number of brilliant speakers, thought leaders, a number of ideas were discussed. We were privileged to have the keynote addresses by Shri Nitin Gadkari ji, Minister for Transport, and Minister of State for Home Affairs, Shri Kiran Rijiju. We also saw on the video screen today the speech by Shri Prakash Javadekar and subsequently by General V.K. Singh. In his very inspiring address, Mr. Rijiju this morning observed that why this change from Look East to Act East. And he himself gave the answer. He said, looking east was not enough. We had to really go the next step. And that's why Act East. And perhaps in anticipation of this comment, I think Shri Gadkari had already said a day before that to have this policy as an effective policy, several practical steps have to be taken. And throughout his speech, he outlined a number of ideas, number of projects, number of proposals, which implemented will not only improve Indian economy, but will lend substantially to the improvement of India's relations with Southeast Asia and the East. So in a way, both have given positive direction to the whole idea that we were discussing during our conference. We had the benefit of dividing this whole conference into 5 tracks. It was mainly for convenience. Essentially, the whole thing is a kind of a holistic approach to this issue. And as just now Mr. Datta said, the idea of confluence in Northeast. In fact, it is the confluence or convergence across the whole landscape of South Asia and Southeast Asia and East Asia that we were talking about. the idea of Asianness, which was described earlier. I think that is distinct from the Western thought, Western thinking. That was really at the root of this Look East policy. It was a creative response to the geopolitical changes, the economic imperatives that India saw at the end of, at the beginning of 1990s. And this kind of initiative India has been taking from time to time. I just want to go back 1947, when Asian Relations Conference was held by Pandit Nehru in Delhi, which was attended by Mahatma Gandhi. It was one of the major initiatives India had taken for the sake of peace and solidarity in Asia. So, for India to take such initiatives with respect to our continent has been a kind of an old practice, and in that sense, Look East was an innovation that India came up with. In the 5 tracks which we elaborated over the last 2 days, discussed at length, I would like to ask all of you, and just I have in my mind outlined a few takeaways. Several ideas were discussed, and I think we will come up with recommendations. But the recommendations that surfaced as a result of discussions which come to my mind, and under the important subject of trade and investment, the background was the changing scenario of the economics in Asia Pacific, where India stands today. We had lagged behind for a long, long time. The whole issue is of economic integration, and in that India must be a part of that. We should become also a part of the supply chain in the Asia Pacific. A large number of important trade negotiations are going on in the Asia Pacific, and our future will depend where we stand vis-a-vis these trade negotiations. So I think arising out of these discussions, we can think of a study or a debate maybe in Symbiosis in Pune on the current state of mega trade bloc negotiations. What is the Indian position and how we can advance our interests through these negotiations even as we navigate through this very complex situation in the global and Asian trade. We had also a separate discussion with respect to Japan. Now, Japan has emerged following the recent visit of our Prime Minister as a center, it has come as the center stage of India's Look East policy. And there are vast opportunities. There is a proposal of nearly $40 billion of the Japanese investment. All that would require a kind of a discourse. It will have to be intellectually thought out also. These are not just the economic proposals. There is a lot of political overtones to this. I think the presence of JICA and JETRO representatives and the excellent presentation by our ambassador sets the tone for a special kind of a study on the Indo-Japan relationship in the context of Look East policy or Act East policy. Connectivity. I think there are no two opinions about the need to move on with respect to connectivity projects. Several of them are pending for a long time. And connectivity, of course, has to be across the board, as we discuss physical, maritime, road, airlines, of mines, and so on. So I think on connectivity, a lot is being done. Much more needs to be done. I think we can't find ourselves to be lagging behind other major countries in Asia which move much, much faster with respect to connectivity than what India has done. Again, on the issue of defense and security, I think this is again unexceptional unless there is regard for defense and security. The whole discussion about our policy to Look East will get nullified. So I think we will have to work on that. But in that topic, I think 2-3 major areas which came up today in focus. One was the Indo-Pacific. It's a new concept which has now emerged, and it by the very mention of the word Indo, India has been for the first time brought into the discussion with respect to the security issues of Asia and the Pacific. Now it is not Asia Pacific, but Indo-Pacific. The term is still not fully acceptable and popularized, but here I think India will have to work on it, and maybe a study group or a detailed research paper on this prepared at Symbiosis could really feed into the discussions which are going on at the policy level on that. The whole geopolitics of the Asia Pacific requires constant survey and analysis. Again, for students who are interested on this subject, I think there is a very fertile ground on this question of, I am quite aware of the concern, I won't take a long time. So this is another area of much importance. Education and culture, I think the point which was brought out about connectivity of minds, and that is, I think, what really will be important when we talk of education. We must think East, and think Asian way, and how that can be done. Unless we are connected through our mindsets, all this talk of roads and airlines, etc., comes to a naught. And therefore, education, culture, and fortunately, we have such a great legacy of cultural affinity between East and India, which goes back to thousands of years. All that, I think, again, requires to be carefully studied. The presence of the Director General of ICCR this afternoon and his outlining of what is being done, what can be done, was very useful. This again can be used as a follow-up of this conference. Finally, the Northeast. I think the main outcome of this conference I would describe as the focus attention on the issues of Northeast. And as Dr. Majumdar at the outset mentioned what is being done, the great step of setting up of the Ishanya Center, I think is a shining example of the keen interest and a felt need or a dedicated feeling here, so far away from Northeast. If this exists in Pune, I'm sure it exists in many other cities of the country, that our brethren from Northeast should not suffer the kind of humiliation or alienation that they are currently feeling, and therefore a lot can be done. I think one of the recommendations, as Mr. Dua mentioned, in the policy formulation towards Act East policy, Northeast states should be invariably consulted. I am aware it has been done from time to time. I myself had attended a conference in Shillong many years when Indian ministers and ministers from Myanmar had attended together. But this should be a regular practice where they should be involved and consulted. The Northeast states will be tempted to have their own foreign policy otherwise, as they did just now, getting oranges and things from Meghalaya doing business with Bangladesh, and Tripura with Bangladesh, Imphal with Myanmar. Nothing wrong in that, but this should be a kind of a coordinated approach. If I understand correctly, I think the main problem in the Northeast is jobs, and that creates major alienation. And if the jobs have to be created, you will need investment, and you will also require skill development. And here, I think a relatively more advanced area like Pune and the surrounding areas can certainly positively contribute. Northeast students or young people could come in large numbers to Pune, where they can be provided with special skills which will help them to create industries and enterprises in Northeast. And I'm sure a large number of you, students, young entrepreneurs from this area will be adventurous enough to travel across to Northeast and set up small or medium scale industries in that area. These are some of the recommendations that we can consider. We hope to prepare a detailed report kind of a set of recommendations which can be useful for policymakers as well as for civil society alike. And that will be, I think, the gainful outcome of this very useful conference that was held in Symbiosis over the last 2 days. Yes, I was trying to sum up the whole discussions, but the chairperson of this panel just reminded me that if there are any questions, please, the floor is yours and please ask them. The panelists here will be happy to answer questions, but that will be with respect to the discussions on Northeast.
I think they're satisfied with the... But I'll take two... Is there a question?
I cannot see. Yes, please. Please, who is that?
Hello. Myself, Rock Lungleng. I'm from Manipur, Ukhrul. I'm a Naga. And I work here as the president for Northeast Community Organization. I've been in Pune since 9 years, so just wanted to know before I share what I really feel in my heart. Since yesterday, from the beginning, the session, it has been a very fascinating and very inspiring conference. And I just feel that we are the Northeasterners. We are at this focus, at the center of the focus right now, and we feel so great. But however, at the same time, when I think of the reality that's happening in my region, and in may not be in general, but in a state like Nagaland, in Manipur, in Assam, I think the challenge it's much more beyond that fascinating thing. And before I ask the question, for me, I feel the challenge is not just about people-to-people relationship and also the trade and the investment, but for me, I feel that down the line, there's a need of peace. And I'm sure, I know some of the panelists, they have mentioned some of the aspect for that, but the reality, the issue, and the fear thing that we feel in our hearts as a Northeasterners, there's insecurity. And insecurity not from outside, but insecurity from the within. I think that has more heavy weight in our hearts, first thing. And the second thing, it's the challenge, it's not just about, now for us, we could not really think of Northeast so much, because when we think of our life condition right now, 60 to 70% of the educated youths are living outside our homeland, outside our states. And when we think of the future, people want to go back, but we have a second thought because of job, but job can be created in some mechanism, but there's no security, and we come back to that point again. And even if you, when you want to start a business, entrepreneurship, there's a security threat. When you want to start with what you have in your hands, half of your capital has to go to that a group that threaten you. Unless you give away, unless you pay them, or unless you favor them, your business will never run as per what you aspire to be. So I feel that as we have discussed so much, and we have blessed so much, and we are inspired so much, but still then there's a down the line. I think as a human being, as a people who has emotion, who has a feeling, who has a heart, there's the main thing is that we need peace and development. Yes, it should go hand in hand, but at the same time, peace is something we have been longing, and as a younger generation, we don't want to look back what that those past year that incidents and the challenges and the conflict that has happened, but we want to look forward with that kind of aspiration and vision. So I think as a Northeasterners, again, I've been living in Pune for 9 years. I cannot be confident the way I am in Pune and when I go back to home. It doesn't mean that my people are bad, but the situation, the environment is not what a place like Pune gives us. In Pune, example, you can run around at night, go around, do whatever you want, because there's a system. to take care of you. But in other place, it's all at the hands of you, when you favor someone else, unless you favor or unless you do something, something favoring to a group, then you'll never be confident, and your work, your business, your anything will not be successful. So there's a reality, and I really want our friends, whoever has gathered here today, it's beyond whatever we have talked about, in fact, the reality. So if you really want to help us, even beyond this government issues and this plan, please come and visit Northeast and try to understand the reality of my people, the Northeasterners, and how we really want to become and to go along as the generation comes. So I really want to urge our friends who have gathered here, and I think this kind of conference will bring a big change, and that this impact will give us a future. That's which I want to highlight. And again, lastly, I want to ask this question again, that the security needs to live a secure life, not from outside, but even within ourselves. It's so important. And so if you could focus and address us, that would have been a more, a comfortable, and it would have comforted us more better. That's what I feel. Thank you so much.
Well, as they say, that was the reality check. And all of us need to go back and put on our thinking caps again and see whether we have any answers for this young man's very poignant appeal for peace. Is there any? Ms. Vesvasra, would you like to answer?
No, this is not really a question. This is a statement which we do agree. The situation is, as you say, quite uncertain, but as I mentioned, Mizoram, for example, has shown us the way. Mizoram is one of the most peaceful places in the country today. So what you have suggested is very, very essential, that the outside world, conferences like this should take place in those areas and talk and enthuse those people there who are little not yet convinced about the peace process, and maybe things will change to some extent that way. Second thing, government have to take firm measures on many of the issues which have to be taken. Thirdly, development process has to be stronger so that the people who are not having employment, who are not having income, going and joining all those elements from where you would get the extortion money and all, can be reduced. And lastly, the most important part, each one of us has a responsibility as a civil society member to create that opinion within that region that this type of violence is affecting our future. So, but the point needs to be, the reality check needs to be very deeply gone into, and thank you for raising that issue before all the people who are from outside, and perhaps that will help in future deliberations and all. Thank you.
I'll just take 2 minutes to say many, many thanks to Dr. Majumdar, Dr. Vidya, our colleagues in the faculty, and the students who worked very hard, who all worked very hard to make our stay and the deliberations